Hello again, delightful Godot people. In this video, we're going to set up a play space. That's going to be a basic level because we're going to be using a lot of physics here, and there's some stuff we need to have ready to make that happen. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, we're going to need a floor. Because if we've got a bunch of rigid bodies, those are going to have gravity automatically assigned to them unless we tell them otherwise. If there's no floor, they're just going to fall before we can do anything. We also need a camera. We're using 3D. If we don't set a camera, we won't see anything. In 2D, you'll just get the default view, but in 3D, we must have a camera. While we're setting that, we may as well check our environment settings because those are linked to the camera. I'd also like to put some lighting in. Let's make this look good. But if we're lighting things, we need objects to light. So I'm going to get into Godot, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a basic node. So let's make a spatial node. So spatial, there we are, because it's going to be a very basic 3D node. I'm just going to call this level 1. Now later on, we may decide to make this a template, and I'm going to rename it and resave it if we do. So if we want multiple levels, and all levels must have some things in common, and they all inherit from a template, we could call this our basic. In fact, I could just call this level template. So let's do that now. Level template. Much better idea. All right, so we have our level template node. We don't have a mode. We have a node. If we go to models and into architecture, you'll see we have a floor. Now these are all made by Kenny, and they're pretty high quality, and they've got lovely textures. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just drag the mesh in, and it's going to create a new mesh instance. I'm going to click on the mesh instance and rename it floor. We've now got something called floor. I'm going to set the transform, because right now it's just wherever I happen to place it. That's not that useful. So under translation, go to 0, 0, 0. You'll notice, by the way, I've already set grid snapping on right here. So when I move things, they will move to the grid. One more thing you'll notice. The origin is not in the center, right? This thing here. This is where the floor's position is being calculated. That's because Kenny likes to put his origins in the corner. It's very useful in a lot of cases. It's actually not always that useful in Godot, and there's going to be a couple of cases where it will cause us problems. Normally you would fix this in Blender, but I'm going to show you what these problems are and how we could fix them if we get assets like this. So what I want to do is make the floor a nice big size. I'm going to go down to scale in the transform, making sure I've got my floor selected, not my level template. And I'm going to give this, what do you think, 15 by 15. I'm going to leave the Y as 1. It's a floor. These are meters. So 15 by 15 on the horizontal is great. I don't need a 15-meter tall floor. If you don't speak metric, I'm sorry, but I'm sure you'll get used to it. Okay, so we now have a mesh called floor. It won't work as a floor. If we have any rigid bodies, they'll just fall straight through it. So we need to give it collision. Easiest way to do that, go to the mesh button, and we're going to add a convex collision static body, right? Not the sibling, the static body. And there it is. You can see the collision is all the way around it, and our floor is off to the side because this is the origin. This is where Godot is calculating its position. It's very difficult to change the origin of an object within Godot. So instead, I'm just going to move the entire floor over. And now when things spawn in, they'll spawn in on the floor. Let's move it down one as well. You know what? Let's go to translation. I believe I'm looking at 42. Should be about right. 42 by negative 42. And I'm just going to move it down by 1. No, let's move it back up by 1. Having the grid above it is actually a little annoying. How's that look? That's not quite center. I was wrong. It's not 42. It's, what is that? 36. Okay. Doesn't actually matter too much, but looks good. Okay, right now we have a level. We haven't even saved this. Let's save it. I'm going to go to scenes, and I want to make a new folder. Let's create a folder and call it levels, within which we'll put level template.tscn. So there it is. Okay, so we have this level, and if I press play right now, and we select this as our default scene, we can change that later, that's fine. Gray screen. Why? No camera. Back up to level template. It's not a child of floor. So it's a child of the root node. We're going to make a camera. And let's just see. You are in the floor. That's a terrible view. So let's move you back a bit and up by 2 meters. It's about the height of a human. 1.6 is an average height, I think. I don't know. I forget. Click on preview. Lots of floor. Press play. Great. Now, if you want to, this is where you're going to change your environment. So by clicking on the camera, and you probably remember this from Cube Did Kickabout, If we go up to the root folder, there's our default environment. We can just drag that in. Any changes we make to that will change every single scene. If you don't want that to be true, you're going to need to make a new environment for this scene and use that. Right now, ambient light is set to blue. And we're taking all of the light from the sky anyway, right? So we've got a very blue sky with a slightly blue sun, and everything is going to have this blue tint to it. Let's make the ambient color slightly more orangey. That's not going to be how the actual object's going to be lit. We're going to put some lighting in it too. But just to see what we're doing. You can also go over to sky. We're using a procedural sky right now. And if you want to, you can change these values. I'm actually okay with them as they are, but if you wanted to, your top color could be bright pink. There we go. That looks ghastly. And our horizon color could be this horrible burgundy color. Wow. You know, I don't miss the 1980s. Okay, let's go back a little bit. That looks much better, doesn't it? If you want to change them, this is where you'll do it. I'm going to go back. We could also put on reflections and also exposure. Not going to mess with those yet. Let's have some objects first. Okay, we need an object. First I'm going to do, go to Models and into Furniture. And we have a bunch of objects here. And what we want to do is bring one of these in as a rigid body. We're going to bring it in as a rigid body because then it'll automatically have gravity applied, and that's perfect. A quick warning. I'm going to use this desk corner. And if I start running it in game, it's going to behave very weirdly. So if yours does that, don't panic. When you come back after we pause it, I haven't shown you the test slide yet. When you come back, I'll show you how to fix that. But for now, my challenge to you is to bring in 1 or 2 items of furniture. So create 1 or 2 rigid bodies and use those furniture meshes. Don't worry if you get a bit confused, just get familiar with making things in 3D. So pause the video, pick 1 or 2 items of furniture, bring them in, and then when you come back, I'll show you my solution. And welcome back. All right, so I'm going to bring in a desk. You know what? I'm going to make a node, just a basic node, and call it furniture. Let's organize these things. Great. I had to check my spelling. My eyes are going weird. Now, I'm going to drag in this desk. And I'm just going to move it up a little bit. And look where the origin is. See that? At the moment, this is just a mesh. If I press play, nothing will happen. All right, desk just hovers there. Very boring. Let's rotate it a bit so we can actually see what's happening. And move it back that way. Okay, so we have a boring desk. It's also very badly lit. I'm going to fix that in a minute. To make this into a rigid body, there's a couple of things we could do. But what I'm going to do is actually make the rigid body node. And I'm going to drag the mesh instance into the rigid body. And now I'm going to reposition the rigid body to that node. I'm doing this way around because this is a mistake I made a lot, right? I would drag the mesh into its rigid body and then not notice that the positions are different. So let's put it back to where it was. So you are at 0, 0, 0, and your rotation is 0, 0, 0. Fantastic. So now you're back to where I expect you to be. Let's rename this desk. And back onto the mesh instance, that was hard to say. Let's give you, here we go, a tri-mesh collision sibling, because we have lots of little details. Let's follow it around, because we want the player to be able to jump on it. We want things to go underneath. And we should now have a nice little desk. I'm going to go back up to the desk itself. Don't move the child, move the parent. Rotate it a bit, and just move it back and up. Great. Look what happens when I press play. Oh God, my desk is possessed. Why is this happening? It's happening because the origin is right here. Let me show you what that means. Origins matter. The origin is the position of a node, is where Godot is going to put all of the calculations, right? So if I say the desk is at 0, 0, 0, what Godot is doing is looking at the origin of the desk. It's not looking at the mesh and getting an average. You've seen, when I had this mesh instance over here somewhere, that it's possible to have the mesh in the wrong place. But the other side of that is the origin is where the physics will be calculated from, right? So if we're applying any kind of physics calculation, it's always going to be from where the origin is. And that's important because that means that the origin is the center of gravity. Look at the desk. Our center of gravity is right here. And when we press play, the desk will try and get to its center of gravity, which is there. That's not what we want. So how can we fix that? Well, first off, let's put some light in here because I can't actually see the desk. Don't worry, we will get to it. I'm going to make a directional light like the sun. And it's going to be, let's go nice and high and point it in the right direction. And down like so. How's that? Is that better? It's a little bit better. Let's point you this way. Let's actually point this over that way. Yeah, it's getting a bit better. Now the desk is, of course, the same color as the floor because I wasn't paying very much attention, but we can fix that. Okay, so we have a desk. It should cast some shadows now. Boom. Actually, it's not casting shadows. Directional light, you need to cast shadows. There we go. That's going to look better. Okay, now when I press play. Great. So it's trying to write itself. So how can we fix that? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select both children, the mesh instance and the collision shape. And here is the origin. So I'm going to move them like so. Now it's looking a little bit better, and I am eyeballing this, I will admit that. But I'm going to move them a little bit further and maybe down one. So now when I look at it, the center of gravity is in a slightly better place. In fact, the center of gravity wants to be here, doesn't it, because of the physics of this. So let's go even further in that direction. So you two can go like so. Let's switch off grid for now. And how's that? It's looking better. Okay, making sure the desk is selected now because I want to move the entire object, not just the mesh. Move it up a bit. And what I'm expecting now is the desk to slam down, maybe bounce a little, and not do anything else. Boom. Much more like it. And you know what? Let's make the desk heavy. So these are all in grams, I think they are. And I happen to look up how much a desk would weigh. So let's say 270. How's that? Bonk. Much more like it. In fact, that's the mass, not the weight. So the 270 should be here. I just made the world's heaviest desk. So if you work in removals, I'm so sorry about my desk. But one more time. Bonk. Fantastic. We have a desk with its center of gravity corrected. It's a little bit of a hassle, right? But if you import an object and it's working great and then you apply physics to it and it starts flipping out like that, check where the origin is. And that brings us to the end of the video. In this video, we've set up a basic play space so we can play with physics and build levels, and we've looked at how to fix center of gravity problems in rigid bodies. So an excellent start, and I will see you in the next video.